The sun hung low over Ouagadougou, casting a golden haze across the sprawling capital of Burkina Faso. It was April 16, 2025, and the city pulsed with an uneasy rhythm. The air was thick with dust and anticipation, as if the land itself knew something was about to break. Burkina Faso, a nation scarred by years of insurgency, political upheaval, and foreign influence, stood at a crossroads. At its helm was Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young, charismatic leader who had seized power in September 2022. At just 37, he was a symbol of defiance, a revolutionary in a red beret who dared to challenge the neo-colonial grip of Western powers. His policies, expelling French troops, forging ties with Russia and China, and nationalizing key industries, had made him a hero to many and a target to others. Traoré's vision of a sovereign Burkina Faso, free from foreign domination, had ignited hope among the youth and the disenfranchised, but it had also sown seeds of discord. His enemies were legion, foreign powers wary of losing influence, internal dissenters within the military, and shadowy terrorist groups exploiting the nation's vulnerabilities. By April 2025, Traoré had survived at least 19 documented assassination attempts, each more audacious than the last. Yet he remained undeterred, his resolve forged in the crucible of Burkina Faso's struggles. This story begins in the quiet of his private garden, a rare sanctuary where the weight of leadership could, for a moment, be set aside. But peace is fleeting for a man like Traoré, and what unfolded that morning would shake the nation and the world to its core. Chapter 1. The Garden at Dawn. The garden behind the presidential residence was an oasis of green in the arid heart of Ouagadougou. Bougainvillea spilled over stone walls, their vibrant pinks and purples a stark contrast to the dusty streets beyond. A small fountain gurgled softly, its water catching the first rays of dawn. Ibrahim Traoré knelt beside a bed of hibiscus, his hands buried in the soil. It was a ritual he cherished, tending to the earth, a reminder of the agricultural reforms he championed. In these moments, he was not the president, not the soldier, but a man connected to the land his people depended on. His red beret rested on a nearby bench, beside a worn copy of Thomas Sankara's speeches. Traoré's idol, Sankara, had been Burkina Faso's revolutionary president until his assassination in 1987, a crime many believed was orchestrated by foreign powers. Traoré saw himself as Sankara's heir, carrying the torch of self-reliance and Pan-Africanism. But he knew the cost of such ideals. The scars of 19 failed assassination attempts, ambushes, bombings, betrayals, were etched not on his body, but in his vigilance. This morning, he was alone. Or so he thought. His security detail, fiercely loyal after years of weeding out traitors, patrolled the perimeter of the residence. Lieutenant Amadou Zongo, his chief guard, had insisted on stationing men closer, but Traoré had waved him off. "Let me have this hour," he'd said. "The flowers don't conspire." As he worked the soil, a faint rustle broke the silence. His hand paused, hovering over a trowel. The sound was subtle, like the wind brushing through leaves, but it was out of place. Traoré's instincts, honed by years in the military, flared. He didn't look up immediately, instead letting his senses map the garden. The fountain's gurgle, the distant hum of the city, the absence of birdsong, it was too quiet. Slowly he stood, brushing dirt from his hands. His eyes scanned the garden, lingering on the shadows cast by the bougainvillea. There, near the wall, a flicker of movement. A figure, cloaked in darkness, crouched low. Traoré's heart quickened, but his face remained a mask of calm. He reached for the trowel, its metal edge glinting in the dawn light. It was no weapon, but it would have to do. "Who's there?" he called, his voice steady but laced with authority. No answer. The figure froze, then darted toward the wall. Traoré sprang forward, his boots crunching on the gravel path. As he closed the distance, a second figure emerged from the opposite side of the garden, moving with purpose. The glint of a blade caught the light, a silenced pistol in the second figure's hand. Traoré dove behind a stone planter just as a muffled thwip broke the air. A bullet grazed the planter, sending a spray of dirt into his face. He gripped the trowel tightly, calculating his options. The garden, his sanctuary, had become a kill zone. Chapter 2. The betrayal. The first shot was followed by another, then a third. Traoré rolled to his left, using the planter as cover. His mind raced, piecing together the situation. The attackers were coordinated, likely professionals. This was no random act. It was a planned assassination, and they had breached the residence's inner sanctum. That meant betrayal. Someone had let them in. He heard footsteps crunching closer. The second attacker was circling, trying to flank him. Traoré's eyes darted to the bench where his radio lay, too far to reach. He cursed under his breath. His security team should have detected the breach by now, but the silence from the perimeter was deafening. Traoré, a voice hissed from the shadows. It was low, guttural, and carried a foreign accent, French perhaps. You can't run forever. Traoré's jaw tightened. The voice confirmed his suspicions. This was no domestic plot. Foreign hands were at work, likely the same ones that had tried to topple him 19 times before. France, the United States, or perhaps a proxy like Côte d'Ivoire, each had motives to see him dead. His expulsion of French troops, his pivot to Russia and China, and his nationalization of Burkina Faso's gold mines had made him a threat to their interests. He peered over the planter, catching a glimpse of the second attacker. The man wore a black balaclava, but his build suggested military training. Traoré weighed his options. He could stay pinned down and hope for rescue, or he could act. The trowel in his hand felt woefully inadequate, but he had survived worse odds. Then, a new sound, a soft click from the direction of the fountain. Traoré's eyes widened. A device, small and metallic, was nestled among the rocks at the fountain's base. A bomb. His heart pounded. If it detonated, the garden would be obliterated, and with it, any evidence of the attackers' identities. He had seconds to act. Traoré lunged from behind the planter, sprinting toward the fountain. Bullets whizzed past, one grazing his shoulder, sending a jolt of pain through his body. He ignored it, diving for the device. His fingers closed around it, a crude explosive, wired to a timer. 10 seconds remained. As he yanked the wires free, diffusing the bomb with a precision born of desperation, a shadow loomed behind him. The first attacker, now wielding a machete, charged. Traoré rolled to the side, the blade slicing into the ground where he'd been. He swung the trowel, catching the attacker's wrist. The man grunted, dropping the machete, but the second attacker was already closing in, pistol raised. Before the shot could ring out, a deafening crack split the air. The second attacker crumpled, blood blooming on his chest. Traoré spun to see Lieutenant Zongo standing at the garden's entrance, his rifle smoking. More guards poured in, weapons drawn, shouting commands, "Secure the perimeter," Zongo barked. "The president's alive." The first attacker, disarmed but defiant, tried to flee. Traoré tackled him, pinning him to the ground. The man's balaclava slipped, revealing a face Traoré didn't recognize. A foreigner, likely. A mercenary. "Who sent you?" Traoré demanded, his voice low and lethal. The man spat, his eyes burning with hatred. "You'll never be free," he hissed. "Not while you defy them." Zongo hauled the man to his feet, cuffing him as the other guards secured the garden. Traoré stood, his shoulder bleeding but his resolve unbroken. The bomb lay inert at his feet, a symbol of how close he'd come to death. But the real shock was yet to come. Chapter 3. The Confession. The presidential residence was transformed into a fortress within hours. Checkpoints sprang up across Ouagadougou, and military helicopters buzzed overhead. Traoré, his shoulder bandaged, sat in a secure briefing room, his red beret back on his head. Across from him, Lieutenant Zongo and Colonel Mariam Ouedraogo, head of military intelligence, awaited his orders. The captured mercenary, now identified as a former French Foreign Legion soldier named Pierre Dubois, sat in a holding cell under heavy guard. "We've interrogated him," Ouedraogo said, her voice clipped. "He's not talking, but we found this." She slid a burner phone across the table. Its call log showed a single number traced to Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Traoré's eyes narrowed. "Ouattara," he muttered. Alassane Ouattara, Côte d'Ivoire's president, had long been a thorn in his side, a staunch ally of France and a rumored conduit for Western interference in the Sahel. The failed coup attempt in April 2024, involving Traoré's own chief of staff and a bribe of 25 billion CFA francs, had also pointed to Ivorian involvement. "There's more," Zongo added, his face grim. "One of our own was compromised. Sergeant Diallo, from your personal guard." Traoré's blood ran cold. Diallo had been with him since the coup, a trusted soldier who had sworn loyalty. "How?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Zongo hesitated, then handed him a recording device. "We found this in his quarters. He was offered $5 million to kill you during your morning prayers." Traoré pressed play. Diallo's voice, trembling but clear, filled the room. "They came to me last week. Said it would be quick, clean. $5 million to shoot him when he bends to pray to Allah. I couldn't do it. I couldn't betray him." The recording ended. Traoré leaned back, his mind reeling. Diallo's refusal had saved his life, but the betrayal stung. "Bring him to me," Traoré said. Diallo was escorted in, his hands cuffed, his eyes downcast. He was young, barely 25, with a scar across his cheek from a jihadist attack in the north. Traoré studied him, searching for the truth in his face. "Why didn't you tell me?" Traoré asked. Diallo's voice cracked. "I was ashamed, sir. They threatened my family. I thought I could handle it, keep them at bay. But when I saw you in the garden this morning, I knew I had to act. I alerted Zongo." Traoré's expression softened, but only slightly. "You did the right thing, but you should have come to me sooner. Trust is our shield, Diallo. Without it, we're lost." Diallo nodded, tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. I'll accept any punishment." Traoré stood, placing a hand on Diallo's shoulder. "Your punishment is to live with your choice and to prove your loyalty every day from now on." As Diallo was led away, Ouedraogo spoke. "Sir, there's something else. The mercenary mentioned a plan B. We don't know what it is, but it's active." Traoré's jaw tightened. The garden attack was only the beginning. Chapter 4. The shadow of Sankara. That night, Traoré stood on the balcony of the presidential residence, the city lights flickering below. The weight of leadership pressed down on him, heavier than ever. He thought of Thomas Sankara, whose assassination had left a wound in Burkina Faso's soul. Sankara had been betrayed by his closest ally, Blaise Compaoré, who ruled for 27 years as a Western puppet. Now, Compaoré lived in exile in Côte d'Ivoire, a constant reminder of the cost of trust. Traoré's reforms, nationalizing gold mines, distributing land to farmers, launching a national postal bank to break free from the CFA franc, were Sankara's dreams reborn, but they came at a price. The West saw him as a threat, a new Sankara who could inspire a continent-wide rebellion against neocolonialism. His phone buzzed. It was a message from an encrypted line, one he used for communications with allies in Mali and Niger, part of the Alliance of Sahel States, AES. The message was from Colonel Assimi Goïta, Mali's leader. "They're coming for you again. Be ready." Traoré's grip tightened on the railing. The AES was his lifeline, a coalition of military-led governments, resisting Western dominance. But it also made him a bigger target. If Plan B was real, it could be anything: a drone strike, a bombing, another coup. He returned to his office, where a map of Burkina Faso was spread across a table. Red pins marked jihadist strongholds in the north. Blue pins marked loyal military outposts, and black pins marked suspected foreign operatives. The garden attack had exposed a vulnerability. His enemies were closing in, and they had inside help. "Zongo," he called. The lieutenant appeared instantly. "Double the guard. No one enters or leaves without my approval, and get me everything we have on Plan B." As Zongo saluted and left, Traoré's thoughts turned to his people. The Burkinabe were resilient, but they were tired. Tired of war, tired of poverty, tired of betrayal. He had promised them a future free from foreign chains, but that future was under siege. Chapter 5. The Rally. The next morning, Traoré addressed the nation from the steps of the presidential palace. Thousands gathered in the streets waving Burkina Faso's flag and chanting his name. His red beret was a beacon, his voice a clarion call. "My brothers and sisters," he began, his words echoing through loudspeakers. "Yesterday they tried to silence me. They tried to silence you. But we are not a people who bow to fear. We are the children of Sankara, the heirs of a revolution that will not die." The crowd roared, their voices shaking the ground. Traoré raised a fist, his shoulder wound hidden beneath his uniform. "They offer millions to betray us, but our loyalty is not for sale. Our land, our gold, our future, these belong to us, and we will defend them." As he spoke, intelligence officers monitored the crowd. Plan B was still a shadow, but the rally was a potential target. Drones patrolled the skies, and snipers scanned from rooftops. Traoré knew the risk, but he refused to hide. His people needed to see him to know he was alive. Behind the scenes, Ouedraogo's team had uncovered a lead. The burner phone from the garden attacker had received a second call, this one from a number in Paris. The French government denied involvement, but the evidence was mounting. Traoré's pivot to Russia and China had shifted the geopolitical chessboard, and France was losing its grip on the Sahel. As the rally ended, a young woman approached the barricades clutching a letter. She was Aissata, a farmer's daughter from the north, her face weathered by hardship. "For you, Captain," she said, handing it to a guard. Traoré opened the letter later, in the safety of his office. It was simple, written in a shaky hand. "You are our hope. Don't let them take you from us." He folded the letter carefully, tucking it into his pocket. Aissata's words were a reminder of why he fought, and why he could not falter. Chapter 6. Plan B revealed. 2 days later, Ouedraogo burst into Traoré's office, her face pale. "We've found it," she said, spreading documents across the table. "Plan B is a drone strike. They're targeting you at the AES summit next week in Bamako." Traoré's eyes scanned the documents, intercepted communications, satellite, images, and a blueprint of a military-grade drone. The plot was sophisticated, involving mercenaries, foreign intelligence, and a traitor within the AES itself. The summit, where Traoré, Goïta, and Niger's Abdourahmane Tiani would meet to solidify their alliance, was the perfect opportunity for their enemies to strike. "Who's the traitor?" Traoré asked. Ouedraogo hesitated. "We don't know, yet. But the drone is already in Mali, smuggled through Côte d'Ivoire." Traoré's mind raced. Canceling the summit would show weakness, emboldening his enemies. Attending was a gamble with his life, and the lives of his allies. He made his decision. "We go to Bamako, but we set a trap." Bamako, Mali's capital, was a city on high alert. The AES summit was held in a fortified government complex, surrounded by anti-aircraft defenses. Traoré arrived under heavy guard, his red beret a stark contrast to the somber mood. Goïta and Tiani greeted him, their faces grim but resolute. "We're with you," Goïta said, clasping Traoré's hand. "If they want you, they'll have to go through us." The trap was simple but daring. Ouedraogo's team had leaked false intelligence, suggesting Traoré would be at an exposed location during the summit. Meanwhile, Malian forces had deployed electronic jammers to disable any drones within a 10-mile radius. If the plotters took the bait, they would reveal themselves. As the summit began, Traoré spoke passionately about the AES's vision. A Sahel free from foreign militaries, united in economic and military strength. His words were broadcast across the region, inspiring millions. But his eyes were on the skies. At 3:17 p.m., the jammers detected a signal. A drone, cloaked in stealth technology, had entered Malian airspace. Malian forces locked onto it, guiding it into a controlled crash in the desert. The wreckage revealed its origin: a French-manufactured drone, modified with American components. The summit paused as Traoré, Goita, and Tiani conferred. The traitor was still at large, but the drone's failure was a victory. Traoré addressed the press, his voice unwavering. "They tried to kill me in my garden. They tried again today. But we are not afraid. The Sahel will rise, and no amount of bombs or bribes will stop us." Chapter 8. The reckoning back in Ouagadougou, the investigation into the traitor intensified. Diallo, now reinstated, provided a crucial lead, a coded message he'd overheard during his contact with the plotters. It pointed to a high-ranking AS official, someone with access to summit plans. After days of surveillance, the traitor was unmasked, a Malian colonel, bribed with promises of power and wealth. He was arrested quietly, his confession exposing a network of operatives stretching from Abidjan to Paris. The French and Ivorian governments issued denials, but the evidence was damning. Traoré returned to his garden, the hibiscus now replanted, the fountain repaired. He knelt once more, his hands in the soil. The assassination attempts, 20 now by his count, had not broken him. If anything, they had strengthened his resolve. He thought of Aissata's letter, of Sankara's legacy, of the millions who looked to him for hope. The dust was rising, as he had promised, and Burkina Faso would rise with it. Epilogue. The unbreakable spirit. Weeks later, Traoré stood before a crowd of thousands, announcing the launch of the AES passport, a symbol of regional unity. The assassination attempts had not ceased, but neither had his fight. He was a man marked by death, yet alive with purpose. His enemies had underestimated the power of a people united, of a leader who refused to bow. As he spoke, a young boy in the crowd held up a sign, "Traoré, our Sankara." The president smiled, his red beret tilted slightly. The garden attack had been a shock, but what came next was even more shocking. A continent awakening, ready to reclaim its destiny, and Ibrahim Traoré would lead the way.